Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to the first episode of December in the Journey to Happy podcast. My name is Olga and I am your host. Is anybody else super excited about December being here? Okay. If you guys don't know this, I'm going to tell you. You need to know this about me. I absolutely love Christmas. Like I love Christmas. So I've actually been excited about Christmas since Thanksgiving. And in Canada, Thanksgiving is in October. So since Thanksgiving, I feel pumped counting the days. Like I get so excited when I see the beautiful fall colors because I know what's coming. It's Christmas. After Christmas, though, we can pack the winter and move on to the spring. All right, so I am very excited and happy that we're starting this season. It's the season of magic, it's the season of family, of coming together, of traditions, which I also value so much, so much. And now that I have a little guy in my life, I just feel so privileged to be able to pass to him family traditions. But none of what I'm telling you has to do with what we're going to be talking about today, which is the power of one. This podcast, it's all about valuing one, the one. Okay. Have you ever walked around life feeling like what you do is not quite enough? Do you ever wonder why? What is the energy behind your overdoing, your overthinking? You're constantly trying to compensate for the things that you feel you do not do good enough, you did not give enough, you're not enough of. Do you walk around feeling a sense of guilt and maybe shame that you don't do enough, that what you do ultimately isn't cutting the expectations you have of yourself? And sometimes you might even do this with others where you feel that what they do is not enough. And perhaps you're looking for ways to feeling enough. You are not alone. If this is you, this episode is for you. I was so inspired to record this episode right after I did some peer coaching with one other life coach who's being coached by my same coach. And she requested me to give her some peer coaching. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, but I want to tell you that the reason I became so passionate to record this episode is because I am convinced she's not the only one who feels this way, as I'm sure you're realizing. I just described maybe half of you listening to this episode. And as a life coach, I have encountered time after time that many of the mental dramas or the human suffering that my clients have comes down to this belief that we're not good enough, that they are not good enough, and they live life full of fear of somebody discovering that they're not good enough. And so they just cover that up with a lot of doing, a lot of overthinking, this constant energy that doesn't allow them to be for too long in the state of enoughness. Many of us carry this deep belief inside our brain that says that we're not enough. And based on that limiting belief, we operate with a sense of rush that we cannot slow down. We never look at the accomplishments, the things we have bought, the things that we've done, like we are like what we think is, like, wow, this is amazing. Look at all the things I bought. This is enough. Look at all the things I've accomplished. This is wonderful. I had this peer of mine actually write down a list of all of her accomplishments, and she had to write down who accomplished that. And she was like, but I already know I did. I'm like, you might understand you did, but you don't really fully understand you accomplished all those things. When we operate from this belief that we are not good enough, we cannot slow down. We are actually afraid of slowing down. We're afraid of resting because then we might become incompetent to the eyes of others. We also don't celebrate. We don't take the time to celebrate our accomplishments. So we buy too many things. We don't have enough pants. We don't have enough bathing suits. We don't have enough Christmas decorations. Guilty. Because everything we do it from the lenses of us not being enough. So nothing is ever enough. That is how we end up with behaviors like over shopping, over drinking, overeating, under eating, over arguing, overextending ourselves by saying yes too much, being overly available. It all comes down to the belief that you might have that you're not enough and operating under that fallacy. So in this episode, I want to talk about the power of one. And I am going to tell you a bit of a personal story that maybe some of you guys have heard me talk about in previous episodes, but I'm going to relate it to this episode in that this is how I learned about the power of one. This is, I have titled this The Power of One after coaching my peer. And so I don't, if you've ever heard me tell this story in the past, I wouldn't have draw the conclusion of like, this is the power of one. It would have come from a different perspective of maybe resiliency and hope and self-love, but not as the power of one. So I want you to start thinking of yourself and what you do from this perspective. Okay. So as I tell you about my story, as I tell you about my peer that I was coaching, I sort of want you to place yourself in the shoes of my peer or even myself and think to yourself, what if I was to start thinking from this perspective? What if I was to start thinking that there's a lot of power behind one? Okay, so I was coaching my peer. Like I said, she's another life coach. And I was coaching her because she had a really heavy feeling of disappointment. She had disappointment because she had set a personal goal and a professional goal of helping 14 women. And despite her best efforts, she had only been able to recruit 3 new clients. And so she was only helping 3 people instead of 14. So as she was describing to me how disappointed this was, how this coaching wasn't helping her, the coaching that her and I both are attending, and that she was basically convinced that it just was not going to work for her in particular. Like she was not going to be able to succeed in this coaching. That it was not going to work for her. And the evidence was that she had put her best effort. When she was describing this to me, she was describing it as a story of failure, self-failure. Each time she was meeting with any of these clients, all she was thinking about was how she was a failure because these 3 did not amount to 14. So each time she was meeting one of her clients, in her mind, she was thinking, this is only one. And it's only one client. And it's not 14, and I am such a failure, and what do I have to offer to this person after all? And the result has been a really big slowdown in her business because she was in this, I don't even want to call it roller coaster. I don't think it went high. It was just going straight down the hill from here because she just couldn't recover from the thought that she wasn't good enough, that 3 clients were not enough. So when I asked her a very interesting question, I said, okay, so in your goal of having 14 new clients, has your brain contemplated having a beginning and a middle that can be celebrated? Or success is only at the end when all 14 are here? And without thinking, she says, well, success is only at 14. And so I want you to just think of this for yourself as well. How often do you set yourself a goal and unless you're at the end, you do not dare to celebrate? So when I was asking her, so you don't think that this is the beginning of the 14 people, that having three is like 3 steps closer? She laughed and she's like, well, I guess you have to start somewhere. I'm just raising your awareness here because we don't get to 14 without one. And I know as a life coach personally, I know I've seen it, that when I help one human, I'm not just helping that person. Indirectly, I'm helping all the people that person comes in contact with. I've had husbands email me. I've had parents email me. I've had aunts email me about their needs. Or I've had, this is the most beautiful story of indirect help. One of my clients got nominated as an angel caregiver. She is a nurse here in Ottawa. And once a year, patients can nominate one of their medical caregivers as an angel, and they kind of give out wings of an angel to that person if the nomination ends up being in like they win this. Many people voted. And so why they selected my client was because of the letter that her patient had written about her. And so my client calls me in tears and disbelief that she had received this award. And what I found so beautiful is that she said, Olga, as this client was describing me, is as though she was describing the work that you teach. And my client became pleasantly surprised to see that the work that she's doing on herself is now being passed on to her patients. Imagine that, life coaching over here to gain confidence, to stop overthinking, to be more authentic, suddenly gets reflected into a patient where they also feel that they could have been totally authentic in these sessions, in these medical meetings, and where they felt so compassion, they feel so grasped by compassion by their nurse. And that, my friends, is how I understand that when you impact one human, you're actually not just impacting one. You're impacting every single one that comes in contact with that one. So you see, I'm getting closer to my point here. You might be deducting now what I mean by the power of one. When we're constantly operating from a place of not enoughness, we're not enough, nothing ever is enough. Actually, I wonder for my peer, if she got to 14 people, if she felt at that point that she was enough. I bet you anything she will grab somebody else in our group who might have more than 14 clients and compare herself to that and be like, well, this is good, but it's not 16 like over here Olga has. So that is the risk of living and operating with this limiting belief of not enoughness. We keep moving the bar up. Now, in my peer's own mind, she wasn't trying to make it mean that the person or the one client was not good enough. Not at all. It's never about that other person. She was thinking of herself, that she was not a good enough coach because she didn't have 14, which, by the way, was a random number that she set for herself. So my coaching was about helping her see the value of impacting one client. But most importantly, I help her realize how her biggest obstacle to those 14 people, to getting to those 14 people, was how little she valued herself and her work and the impact of her work. She was feeling disempowered. She wanted evidence to come before so that she could believe that she could help or that she could impact the lives of 14 people. But we got it all wrong, ladies. When we don't feel enough and we're trying to overbuy, to overextend ourselves, to overdrink, to overeat, to suddenly fill that hole and feel enough, we're doing it backwards. We gotta fill the cup that says we're enough first, and then go shopping. Go shopping from a place of enough. You are enough, you've got enough. Let's see how many things you come back home with. Probably in generally with things that you absolutely fell in love with or that you need. Not with a whole bunch of things that seems like a good idea to have. So I want you to begin to think of in what circumstances you are sort of like equivalating like your success. Did I just make up a word? I think I did. Equating. That your success can only come when you have 14, and that every step you're taking, every single one step doesn't count because it's not the 100 or the 1,000 steps that you set yourself to walk. and you haven't yet realized what an impact it has for you and everybody around you, each step you take, every single step is powerful and makes you feel empowered when you can actually acknowledge its value. I asked the spirit to think about what it would do to her overall community if she was to embrace and feel empowered when it comes to her own capabilities. When she was to dive into what she was so passionate about, not making it mean anything about herself, whether she had 14 people or 3 people. When she gave all of her value and thought to that one client at a time. She says that when she thought from that perspective, that one person was very powerful. And she even related that to herself. She was a powerful coach who created the impact that that one human had. And indirectly, she helped many more. So this is when I gave her the example that I am about to teach you or give to you, which is how I learned all about the power of one. This I learned throughout my fertility journey. It's an awareness I had, and this is what I've titled now, this awareness, the power of one. And like I said, maybe you've heard this in previous episodes, but I don't think I've ever explained it from this perspective. So let me give you some context. I am a human who, generally speaking, believes more is more. And I have found myself living life in a rush to get to the next level of all things. Like, we're dating. Okay, when are we getting married? We're getting married. We're not even done the wedding yet. Okay, when are we having children? I am in high school already planning what profession am I going to have and pretty much filling out my university applications. It's as though I was, and really still am, having a hard time staying in the present moment and enjoying it fully, celebrating it, letting it take its course, letting it take its time. What I hadn't become aware of is that I also held a belief that I wasn't enough. And that was my rush to get to the next level. Like, nothing was ever satisfying enough. And this is a nice house, but what's next? Okay, we organized the house, we bought the house. What do we do now? It seemed like I had a lot of drive, and I do have a lot of drive, but the energy that was under that was a lack of feeling enough. I kept moving that bar up of what enough was, of what good was. First, you get your degree. Okay, that's enough. Except that once I got it, I'm like, okay, now I need a master's. Okay, now I need a PhD. I had myself convinced that before I could open my private practice, I better had it written, I don't know, scientific books, research books, and had a PhD. And friends, we will still be waiting for me to have a private practice if I had let my brain convince me that I wasn't good enough to start helping people. So coming back to my fertility journey, I became aware that I didn't believe I was enough. And how I became aware of this is that I had the strong belief that it just wouldn't work for me, the treatments, that natural conception wouldn't work for me, similar to what my peer was describing about our coaching program. It will work for everybody, it just won't work for me. What I didn't know is that I also powerfully believed in the power of one, and I hadn't matched it yet to my experience until this happened. And it does make a massive difference when you can turn your brain to the power of one. My fertility journey, I am convinced, was the mentor of unconditional love for me. So it showed up to teach me all about unconditional love. It is who showed up to teach me that I could love myself unconditionally, even if my body didn't perform as I wanted it, even if I couldn't keep a pregnancy, even if I needed lots of treatments to get to my beloved child. Through that experience, I learned to love myself. Despite or in spite, all of those things. So one day when my fertility doctor walked into the office looking really sad and told me that this particular round of IVF that I was currently undergoing had been the worst we've had so far because I was only growing one egg. So for those of you who don't know anything about IVF, is in vitro fertilization, I should say. And the goal is to overstimulate your body with lots of hormones so that you produce more than the one egg that you normally have a month. Every woman normally has one egg a month be released. So they give you lots of hormones so that you can have lots of eggs and potentially more chances of creating one baby. This is a very expensive treatment and is worth the money because then you get more than one embryo, ideally. So when you have really low numbers, like one egg growing, it's not uncommon for the doctor and the clinic to suggest that you cancel the cycle so that you get your money reimbursed and then you just try again. You just had a bad month, that's okay. You just come back another time. So my doctor was no exception. He told me it was the worst that we've ever performed and he wanted to cancel the cycle. Well, he just suggested it. And so that I wouldn't lose my money. In his opinion, and in most people's opinions who do IVF, one egg is just not worth the investment. Except that, like I mentioned before, I internally knew something that I didn't know I knew until this showed up. This scenario showed up to teach me this so that I can teach it to you. And that is the power of one, my friends. I didn't know this. It came very natural to me and intuitively and assertively without even calling my husband to consult. I told the doctor, you're going to take that egg out. And we're going to move forward with this treatment. We're going to see it through. And as I thought of my answer that I gave so assertively, like I had thought about this, but I hadn't, I said to him, that one egg could be my heart of gold. Now, if you've heard this story before, you know that in fact, that one round of IVF is what made my only healthy embryo, who today happens to be the happiest 3-year-old baby boy that I named Mateo, my son. I understood that I had less chances of becoming a mom with each passing round, with each passing month. And if I hadn't had the perspective of the power of one, and I had followed my doctor's perspective, which, by the way, my brain wanted to do for some time, I would have not met my son. I had to have this lesson. And I had to be very confident in one. And throughout the story, this whole 5 years trying to conceive, my husband and I always said, all it takes is one. That was like our mantra. Maybe we should have said, all it takes is two. So my son would have had a sibling, but that's what we went with. All it takes is one. And I so strongly believe in the power of one. Now, if I had continued to believe that I'm not good enough, if I hadn't allowed myself to go into a deeper level of self-love, which, by the way, I don't master 100%, and I don't really know anybody who does, but is so much stronger than it's ever been, I would have let fear take me away from seeing the value of one. So this is what I was coaching my peer on, because it doesn't mean it's not good enough. One doesn't equal not good enough. Just because my son is one doesn't mean I'm lacking anything. He's my one. I don't see him as my only one. I see him as my one. So just because we only have one step, we take one step and it's small, doesn't take away the great potential of what follows that one. So I want you to think of this for a moment for yourself. In what parts of your life currently are you diminishing yourself or your value because, and I quote, it's just you? How many times do you say, oh, it's okay, it's just me tonight, so I'm not making supper? How many times do you start a sentence with, it's just me, and follow that sentence with some kind of behavior that takes away your wonderful value? Something that you wouldn't do if there was one more person with you. So I want to bring the power of one to you, to how you view yourself. What if you were to think of yourself as I thought of my one egg? What if you were to have the capability to see in yourself what I saw in my egg? All this love, all this potential, all these possibilities. What if you have your baby waiting for you, metaphorically speaking, And all it's needing is for you to see your own value. I want you to grow that awareness and ask yourself, what would it be if you were to believe that you are your everything? You are your one, not just one, not just you, but the one. What if you were to extend that into the things that you do? What if you were to give the meaning to that 1 hour you might have with your child before going to school? Instead of thinking it's not enough, but make it really powerful with your thoughts, not like hack that hour with things to do, but you view it as a powerful and enough hour. What if you were to bring the sense of enoughness, that you're enough, and therefore anywhere you go, you bring all of you, which is the gift? What if instead of diminishing how little or helpful you can be towards social dilemmas, you were to think that what you do is very valuable and therefore important for you to do it? What if you were to say, I've done enough, and truly mean it? When a friend is in a lot of need and you feel like you got to do all the things for that friend, and you take a step back and say, no, I've gave her a glass of water, and that I can begin to see that as enough and valuable. The power of one is you. You are the one. You are the one who brings power. Whether you spend 8 hours with your child or one, it is the mindset that you bring into that hour or those 8 hours of I am valuable, and therefore me being here is already of value and is enough. Now that Christmas has started and I go to the stores, which is my favorite time to go, and I see all these amazing new Christmas decorations, my brain goes wild and I want to buy them all because I feel, but I don't have this one, and they all seem so urgent to me to have, which is why I was telling you, try shopping from a place of enoughness. I've got enough. My decorations are more than enough. They're so valuable to me. Will you be so tempted to shop for all the new things? Will you be jealous and insecure in relationships? Will you feel insecure when somebody offers you feedback about how they would parent their child as opposed to how you do it? Or how they would write this email as opposed to how you do it? Probably not. You will think they are enough and that you're enough. And so everybody is good enough to have an opinion. So the power of one comes from doing inner child work, resolving all the parts of your past that have you thinking you're not good enough, doing some child work resolution, forgiveness, healing, deciding that you are now in charge. You are the grown-up in your life. You get to decide that you are valuable, that you are powerful, that you are enough. And you begin to dream and imagine the life that you actually enjoy living and go for it. Because you are the powerful one. So I was telling my peer, and then I thought it would be good for you to know as well. This is part of the work that we do inside being the CEO of your own life coaching program, which, by the way, next week on December 12th, we open the registration for the January group. So as of December 12th, you can sign up for being the CEO of your own life. If you are interested in doing self-worth work to amend parts of your past that need some updating, some healing, if you are interested in learning more about yourself so that you can grow more compassion and confidence, especially towards yourself. If you are interested in extending your support system, not just to me as your coach, but the other women in the group. And just as a reminder, being the CEO of your own life, it's a hybrid. There's some teaching. So you do have modules, videos, courses that help you with the mindset of being authentic and letting go, shedding all these layers that separate you from being you, who you are. And it gives you group coaching 3 times a month. And it gives you one-on-one sessions with me up to 2 times a month. It is the works, all of it. So I'm excited to welcome you if I speak your language, if this type of reflections make sense to you, you feel not only inspired, but motivated to learning about this essence of becoming enough and operating from a place of enoughness. because you realize that will be of incredible value to you and everybody else, then I want to coach you. Come join me. All right, everybody. See you next Monday. Bye for now.